Hey, thanks for coming. You know, I didn't have this advertised because I didn't think it was necessary. And what we're doing is we are going to film this for PEG TV so that it can be shared with a wider audience. So I'd like to start with a quote. Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. In fact, it is the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. And I've been believing that for a long time as an activist, not only here in Rutland, but I started out as a kid with my dad. So can we go to the first? So the whole impetus for this is we need healing as a society. And how you can do that, you can do it pharmacologically, or you can do it with community. There's lots of ways, but I believe the fastest way to come together is in music. I think that brings people really together very well. And so that is the Clement Wood Mansion that, as you can see, needs, it's on the hello.
Hi.
It's on the historical registry, so anything that has to be done there has to be done according to regulations. But it's lovely as it is intact inside, and that's the first time. The first time I went there, we were on a tour because I had started this back in 2020, and it just speaks music through all of it. And on the second floor, it was actually made into offices, but it's still a wide open area. So that is the building that would have the whatever we decide. Actually, you know, my vision, which I think everybody got to see. I've been talking about it for quite a while. Is a performing arts studio. It's just made for that. And so that's where I'm, so the purpose of this meeting tonight is to talk about using our resources that we have here in Rutland, which is a little contrary to looking for outside help. And I think the resources that we have are, number one, the people, because Rutlanders have always been interested and always been able to accomplish what they want. It just seems that lately there's so much that as problems in everywhere, not just in Rutland. So the people and also the food. We should have a food economy here. We've got the resources of the farmers, and they are growing the food for us. So eating well and enjoying music is really a recipe for Rutland thriving. If you saw in the paper today, the Vermont Farmers Food Center is getting the funding to bring it as an incubator, and that's the start. People are coming here for the food. Are people coming here for the music? Paramount for a while, for an absolute while. That's been a huge asset that the people came together and brought. So can you do the next? So this land is about 100 acres, and much of it has woodlands, and much of it is undeveloped, and there's trails there, and there's lots of people that are at the athletic center that are using the trails as they are. So it's a wonderful location with open air. And I think if we're going to heal not only through music, it's also through being outside. That we have to get our young people outside and competent in being able to take care of themselves outside. And that is also one of the things that we could do there as far as developing outdoor education programs. Right now, Killington Killington is hiring people from Jamaica and all over the world, not so much anymore, so they run short, but we should be able to have our own trained workforce. And the way you do that, and to me, is to have them learn outdoor skills. And we have a huge playground when you're talking about the Appalachian Trail, and that's nearby, 7 miles from the center. I don't know if some of you remember, in 2005 we ran the Rutland Long Trail Festival, and the hikers thought it was great, and we could do that again. Not as a music festival is what it comes down to. So the resources that we have on hand it's not only the food that the farmers grow, the people that are here that are willing to take on new projects for the most part, and the music. I was first introduced to it at the Long Trail Festival, where we brought local musicians in to do the music there, and it was marvelous. It was absolutely marvelous. The resources that we have here as far as the competency of the musicians is fabulous. And I always had a problem with downtown hiring people from out of state to come in and play music when we had so many people here that do play well and make it their livelihood. And when COVID came, they lost that livelihood. And so the whole idea of the training center, which is what it is, it was a college, but a way to get people trained so that if things get bad, they always have something to fall back on. And that's healthcare, outdoor education, food, and music. So that combination there, no, it's not college degrees, but it is certainly giving people a livelihood that's fun. Okay, everybody at Killington loves to work at Killington because they get to ski at Killington and be with their buddies. So outdoor education would be a big part of this because we have the open land there. Can you do the next? Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you make this profitable is what it comes down to. And, listening to what we have gone through the past 3 years, the science, people have a hard time understanding it. There's so much division, not only amongst us as far as what we should be doing, and being able to get a scientific studies of what's going on in Rutland is very possible, And so, and those protocols are needed when you always have a little, even coming here and whether to wear a mask or not wear a mask, we can learn from the bottom up so that the entertainment field can feel that, yes, they've done everything they can. So that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about infectious disease. We're not talking about any one particular, but, proper hand washing and even for dealing with food, with that, the service training on how to deal with food, that's probably would be first thing with training. There's a full cafeteria and full kitchen down below where the theater is. So it's unlimited. It's unlimited. It would not just come from me. I can't do this by myself. I have to collect and bring together stakeholders that realize that this is a huge opportunity for Rutland City. Instead of talking about we're going to bring in new people with their jobs, that they've been doing it for a while, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, so this is the carriage barn that the sisters turned into radiological training so that you could become workers at the hospital using the X-ray equipment. And it's really quite awful on the inside because of what had been done to it. But I could foresee it being totally ripped out and making it into entertainment venue for people to come together. So, like I said, that's another beautiful building that's up behind the mansion. Can you do the next one, please? There it is from a distance. You can see the land is magnificent, absolutely magnificent. And unfortunately, the last Rutland Redevelopment Authority minutes showed that the city was actively working to recruit housing developers, which I will show you in a bit why that's not such a good idea. So the amphitheater, that would have to be really carefully looked at with what the topography is, and I think this is watershed land. I'll show you that after a while. So we would have to. That's why what we're suggesting is no change in what's there. We're not asking to build new buildings. We're looking to use what is already there and let the land stay as it is. So that's looking down toward the city. So it's quite a beautiful area that I see it as a grass lawn entertainment, really. As you can see, we were seeing the Vermont Symphony Orchestra really being at home there, and the music. When you're talking about, we're talking about playing the music, teaching the music that the kids want. I'm really focusing on the young people here in Rutland and what they would be interested in, to bring them into the fold so that they could be educated in not only music, but also whatever their interest is in, also, which may be going off to college. Who knows? It's not really well thought of for parents when they're paying a lot of money for college, but we need to maintain it because music is part of our lives. For some, we can't lose that. When my mom came over to Ireland in the 40s, and there were lots of immigrants from Ireland at that time, and what they would all do is they'd get together and they would, just like this actually, with all their musical instruments around the living room, and one after another would play their instruments and sing, and we would be part of it for a while till it was time to go off. And my biggest regret was that I never learned the songs that they were singing. I came out of childhood knowing very few Irish songs, and so that hasn't gotten any better. But I certainly appreciate music. As you can see, there is development around there, but it's really geared toward climate changes. I think that what we would have to do is absolutely go green, and I can foresee putting a hotel downtown that they've been talking for years, and using that as a base and transferring people over there through an electric bus or some kind of low energy, low fossil fuel way to get on the property. The parking situation we should be very careful about what's going on with parking. Now, all of this is dependent on, of course, getting it bought. And there's been some controversy. The Rutland Herald talked about where I had talked to Heritage Family Credit Union and Matt Lewandowski, and he, after the last developer was dropped, and he was very open to this plan. And so I came away from it saying, okay, we're vetted, he likes this idea. And so I guess I said, that they were willing to sell it to us, meaning we're okay. The last guy, they didn't really vet, which was part of our complaints about that whole situation, but they agreed that this would be a good plan for Rutland. And this property, all I needed to do was get the $3.5 million to buy the property. So, it would have to be low key as far as, even if we're bringing lots of people there, we would want to do it in a very good way. And like I said, it gives a reason for people to come in to see musicians, to stay downtown and use those services there. Okay, so the flood zone. I guess it's along, as you can see, the property borders Otter Creek. And not only do I appreciate the outdoors and taking care of what we have as far as an environment, which is not what's happening. I think it's like the city with their sewer treatment plant has dumped over 200 times into the Otter Creek from the sewer treatment plant. And that is, the Otter Creek is the drinking water source. It flows into Burlington. It actually flows north, for those of you that don't know that. And so that, what I'm saying is, it's not, you can't put housing there. And for the city to even think about that, when we are not able to handle, when the sewage treatment plant is not able to handle what we have now, that we have over 200, every time it rains now, it's a 100-year flood. If you live in the city, you know. Sometimes you see the water coming out of the sewer line, not the sewer lines, the storm drains. So that's a problem. That's a real problem. So how we're going to get the city to support this is because they need to support it, because that's the best use of the area. We'll take more people, and that's why we're doing this tonight, so that we can let the public know exactly what's going on as far as that being very prime watershed land. What's the next picture? Oh, the zoning map, they changed it. It used to be one acre zoning, and they made it into what they call the campus development. And so instead of all the property being 1 acre zoning for housing, they still are able to use the education part of it for other things. They had plans, and those plans had the plug pulled on them. This is the elevation that I'm talking about, topographical maps. As you can see, every one of those lines represents another line of elevation, and you can see it goes all the way to Campbell Road, which you can't really see there, but it all drains into Otter Creek. So what can be put there, from my point of view, has to allow for the drainage and not to contaminate that drainage. Okay. Soil, what is your name? I'm sorry.
Jamie Snow.
Yeah, okay, so Jamie, this is your area of expertise. So thank you. I can't talk about this. This is just, to me, to look at that, the soil, it's got to be taken into consideration. This is as it is, the map that as it is. Go ahead. So there you can see the main house, which is at the front of the property, and there's the barn behind it. So it's really well situated. And then the house behind, there's 4 houses on there that we could use that footprint and build recording studios / places for guests to stay. I foresee musicians coming up from New York on the train and being able to come up here and enjoy a week away in a beautiful setting and being able to make music if they so choose with their, so there's 4 buildings. That one in the back they're good-sized buildings. But it would be the footprint that we would be using. I'm not sure about using what's there. And there's the pond that drains into the river, which is actually what separates that line. That walkway goes all the way down to the college, as you can see in the top right, and that pond is lovely. But it's a drainage pond that goes into the outer creek. Go ahead. Okay, so this is the big news, that I have talked to some of the musicians in Rutland about getting a festival going, and I've talked to the Department of Rec, the Rec Department, about having it at that site where we now, as a city, own the athletic center that we bought off the college. And so that's going to happen that week of June. It's going to be one day or the other. I think we're going to get the 25th and then the rain date on Sunday the 26th from 12 to 8. So it's just a trial. It's bringing people together to make music, and the musicians in Rutland said that they will organize that. We'll probably be bringing in a truck for the stage, that there's built-in stages built on trucks. So that's where we're at with that. So if you haven't seen our website, it's on the VermontTreeSpirits.com. It was a way to get the word out and get it organized, and Sean has helped me with that. I have a really good website now. And it is the last parcel in Rutland City, and it should be enjoyed by everybody. So what I wanted to talk about, has anybody been following my Mother Frog Tales? Have you seen that comic strip? Well, that's on Vermont Tree Spirits. It's another part of Vermont Tree Spirits that has developed about Mother Frog talking about what's going on around her. And you can follow that along. That's the kind of the environmental part of it, as through the eyes of the frogs that are being drowned. Actually, their tadpoles are being drowned. So what are the learning, if we're a training center, what are the goals that we're learning? How are they different from what's being taught in public school today? Academics. And what I have been doing for a long time is following the indigenous stories and what they teach, and those learning goals across the land with many, if not all, indigenous tribes. We miss the boat as far as Westerners, because what those learning goals, some of them are building community. That's one of the first, and respecting each other. And a lot of this is lost now. Sharing with each other, that it's not me only. Patience, kids have to learn patience, that things don't always go your way and you have a plan B. Care of others, and happiness. How many people are happy today, 3 years after this nightmare that we've all been in, that we're still in. Just a new topic when we talk about war. I wanted to bring the attention, when you are watching it on TV, look at how many are using music to get through it, whether it's children singing or they are singing their hearts out in this war. And it's a solution, really. So I was trying to get Olivia Gawet to sing. She's a soprano. She couldn't come. And so when I talk about all the singing that goes on, we have to learn to sing together. And so I would ask that you all go home and learn this song, so that when we come together, we can sing it together. And it's not an easy song because I've been practicing and it's not easy. So what we're looking for is philanthropists, which is not an easy thing to bring attention to what we're doing here. But I think there are philanthropists out that understand that we have an opportunity and to be able to make a difference. At least in Rutland, we can have fun with it. I have been in touch with Chief Don Stevens of the Abenaki tribe, and they used to call them we used to call them powwows, but they're gathering together regularly to come together in community, and it's really about having fun. And they have them scattered through Vermont because that's a community that's really working hard to make a difference, and it's about happiness and having fun. So, the site has not only a 250-seat theater, but it also has a full cafeteria and full kitchen. And so we know that Vermont Farmers Food Center is doing a good job. I don't know if you're familiar with the Everyone Eats program, where they have restaurants cooking so that cooking food that the farmers grew that are being served to the people that need food, and they're serving about 3,000 meals a week. But what I see is, I don't know if you followed the World Central Kitchen with Jose Andres, started it in 2010. I'm not sure if he started it from the hurricanes. I'm not sure where he first went, but he's all over the world now feeding people that are in crisis. And they have a training program on how to get people ready so that they can, when there's crisis, to be able to come together and feed people. And so I really see bringing the World Central Kitchen in there as a training ground for our young people that are interested, so that they would have an opportunity to serve in regions that are that have had crisis, whether it's in Louisiana with hurricanes or the islands. They're all over the world. It's quite amazing. They've got good support. So that is what I'm talking about for teaching people disaster response in feeding people. I think that's important because who knows where we're going with what's going on in the world. So it's my job to find to raise the funds. And if any of you know any musicians, like Bruce Springsteen just sold his catalog for $100 million in 21, and he's going to have to be filing for 22. There's lots of musicians that have that I think would be interested in this. We just have to get the information to them so that they know. I think that's what I had to say here, and I'm asking you to help get the word out. It's all on Vermont Tree Spirits. We'll keep you updated on that. And the training program that I also talked about starts with self-care and family care, so that when crisis comes, which a lot of people are in crisis, that they have to have a certain level of competency so that they can not only know how to take care of themselves, but also to take care of their families. And from there, so that would be the other training program that we would start with, not only just the food training, but so that the people that go through this program would learn basics to start with before they go out to, whether it's a certified nurse's aide, onto RN, which is, we're desperate for in this state with what's going on with nurses being overwhelmed and ready to retire anytime they can. So that's my presentation. So I would like to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Isn't there lots of space there that could become housing for participants that come for like a program, whether it's a...
Yes, that would be the dormitories.
Okay, so
For
those...
the trainers would be put up in the dormitories. The people that are there being educated would be able to stay in the refinished dormitories because it all needs work.
But if there was like a retreat of some sort, or even if there was some type of a performance, wouldn't there be dormitory buildings that could be rented out for profit too?
We haven't gotten that far.
But I mean, but it's a possibility.
Well, if there's, yes, it's there, that site has the potential to generate income, big time, in my view.
If things are happening there.
If things are happening there, that's correct, right? So, did you have another question?
I did, but I forgot what it was. It might come back to me.
Okay. Anybody else?
So how updated is, I'm going to use the building, how updated is like the wiring and plumbing, say, in the big house?
In the big house?
Yeah.
It's probably not. It's probably not.
As
Nor
much
does
as
it
they
have fire, it has a fire hydrant outside, but it does not, it's not wired for fire. So bringing it up to code,
Yeah.
it has to be brought up to code, and that's probably only wiring.
Yeah.
So I did read your PDF, so it's a pretty ambitious vision,
Mhm.
which is good. But it seems like there's a lot of different programs and different ways to utilize a facility and bring people together. But it does seem like it could be really scattered, and I know you're focused maybe on raising money right now, but each one of these ideas that you have or other people have could be like a little business plan in and of itself.
Mhm.
So if, I don't know, if you got more people and you had like little subcommittees, these people are interested in the healthcare aspects or the environmental or the music, whatever, and come up with these ideas and then put them side by side and then see which ones could be maybe done sooner or easier than others. So I'm thinking like right now, you mentioned the Tuttle Auditorium, right?
Mhm.
So it's possible, and I know you want to do an outdoor amphitheater, but in the short term, if you wanted to have like fundraiser concerts, because I remember when the Paramount Center was being planned, they had some fundraiser concerts, and I think some of them were at the UU Church. And so people went and saw a little concert and maybe bought a CD, but maybe donated some money. So as far as I know, the Tuttle Auditorium is a fairly new facility relative like to the mansion and the carriage barn and stuff like that. So that's something that, maybe you can't outright buy anything right now, but you could maybe rent, let's say for...
The Heritage Family Credit Union is not opening that campus up until it's sold. It's very clear that they're not, they tried it, didn't work with having the other developers sign on. So now that somebody's going to have to buy the whole thing outright and then plan on such.
Okay, what if you said, okay, I mean, is the Tuttle Auditorium, this is a what if, but is the Tuttle Auditorium, it's up to code, right?
Yes.
Could you
That
just
is
buy?
an income generator. That's an income generator.
Are they using it at all now?
No, the whole place is not being used.
Okay, so just like with the model of the field house, right? It's a standalone building on part of the campus, and they must have carved out that for the city, so the city owns, a certain part, and then the rest is owned by Heritage. So if the Tuttle building, or I'm just using that as an example, could be, purchased first, and then,
You won't do it. You won't do it. They've been burned. How many people here are members of Heritage Family Credit Union.
I don't know a lot of details about what happened.
Well, it's community owned, so in reality, it's community owned by 40,000 people in this neck of the woods that, you know, goes
Yeah.
as far as Ludlow and down further than that. It's owned by the people.
So could you vote, could you sort of look at the bylaws and have like an investor vote to say,
I have actually went to them last year and wanted to be able to do a presentation at the annual meeting, which happens around this time of year, and they would not allow it. They would not allow it, but that was when Heartland was still involved.
Now, as members of the credit union, do we have rights or access to knowledge of other members of the credit union, or is that
Well,
a privacy?
Well, I'm not sure. Organizing the credit union because developers don't want the college part. They want it separated out in pieces, is what it comes down to. So we'll see what Heritage, you know, when they said, sure, just get the $3.5 million, we're not going less than that, you know, but you just need to get the $3.5 million, which in today's real estate market, still a big bargain, still a really big bargain.
Two things in response to, and I remember what I was going to say, in response to what you were saying about the, you know, a lot of different possibilities of what could go on there. True, it's a lot, and it's a lot to digest, but I think from past conversations that I've had with Kathleen, please correct me if I'm wrong, like you mentioned the theater and how that could kind of function. Well, I see the kitchen supporting people that potentially want to produce foods where they need to be working in a commercial kitchen.
Right.
And the farmers food co-op people, and when you look at different like brew organizations and winemakers in the state, I could see fundraising meals with pairing of brew pubs and wineries with music being there to raise funds. So there's like this crossover of all this entertainment stuff, and then there's this, you know, deeper level of like educating people to participate in all those areas, whether it's the music and entertainment or the hospitality or all that property can offer. People could be being trained and educated in those areas too. As I think a little bit how it kind of ties together and forms like a pyramid, if you will, of building people up to be able to participate at a higher level.
Yeah, I know what you're saying in the sense of the education aspect, because I did read the PDF. So I guess where I was getting at is the way it's laid out in that PDF, it says raise 3.5 million, then raise another 1.5 million to renovate. So, you know, if this takes 2 years, and it'll be another 3 years before anything can happen, right?
Oh, now I would say 6 years.
Well,
No,
or whatever, I'm just throwing out.
The kitchen and the cafeteria would be opened immediately. That we would get people in there, we would get restaurateurs in there cooking that is how we bring the people together, is over a meal.
so kind of like put it in phases, like phase one is this, and which is going to lead to then the second phase.
Correct.
So kind of like in a business plan.
Right, but what I was getting at is so once you have the property, then you can do things in phases as far as building and start utilizing. But the reason I was bringing up about the Tuttle Theater was see if you can do some fundraising while you're actually utilizing the property, and perhaps, you know, those of us who are HFCU, VT members, maybe if we identify ourselves and, you know, write a letter in support of what you're saying, but maybe say, hey, can we use the Tuttle Theater for fundraising for this? We'll pay you rent, and maybe it could be a rent to own, like if we finally do this, you know, maybe you could knock that off, because
Yeah, well, that kind of negotiation, it was made clear to me that who knows down the line? Who knows
I'm
down
sure
the
there's
line?
insurance and liability issues.
Yeah, no, I
For
understand.
people to be on the property and that they would have to, make it be able to be open and accessible.
But you mentioned also what this, like, I think I sent you an email and I didn't know anything about what you were saying, the city wants to develop it. So you're kind of in competition. If somebody walks in with cash on hand and says, I can buy it now, all this evaporates, right?
That's
But
correct.
the sooner that you can maybe start utilizing it and showing like, hey, we brought in X number of people and we had like one event and we
Pictures
raised
are
this
1,000
much money.
words. Like pictures are 1,000 words. I
Yeah,
can see
even
where
if it's
you're
just
going.
like one day at the Tuttle Theater, okay?
Well, we're not there yet.
No, I know, but I'm just saying this, but if you go in parallel to fundraising with initial starting up, like start really small, and then people will see something happening and they'll give money. But if you sit there and say, oh, I have this or this plan, please give money, it's like a Hail Mary pass sort of thing. But if you can, I don't know, what I don't understand is, I understand the insurance, but if it's sitting there and they are sort of for it, why wouldn't they, maybe work with you?
That's what I say
But
too.
if I can jump in here, I think the word that may be missing in this is stakeholders. You
Right,
mentioned it earlier.
right.
The great challenge in competing against another offer is that you would have to have a great amount of money in hand from maybe a single donator, and this seems rather unlikely. That's what he was mentioning about the Hail Mary pass, right? It makes it more challenging to bring in someone who would donate money and then not want something in return, right? Most
Or be participatory.
would want some type of return of investment, right? They would want to see their money as an investment. So when you put together, and I'm sorry, I think we go back up and say, I love so many of the ideas that you brought forward and in the discussion here. And you can see so quickly all the systems that could overlap, the partnerships that could occur, all the different community groups that could, as you explained, start to intertwine, and then you have a dysfunctional, separate groups all of a sudden joining and functioning together, and it would be a really healthy society in that way. There's so many great ideas you have. The challenge is having stakeholders that are going to invest money and then having that return somehow, that they feel that they're confident about that investment. To have a director that has a plan for everything,
That has to produce.
every inch of the property,
Right.
every single stakeholder, just analyzes everything, and has it all broken down so that every day is scheduled, you know what I mean? Like there's
gotta be a plan.
metrics so that every investor can see there's a real strategy, there's a real plan, there's a director behind it, and it intertwines all these things in such a way that there will be a profit brought back to the property, right, to offset the costs. And that motivates stakeholders to then become more involved, right? So it's a challenge. I'm sorry if I missed the beginning. Is this a nonprofit organization that has a board of directors set up? That's always
Not yet.
Okay, that's usually a great first step, because then that board of directors can make decisions, and they can hire an executive director or someone, and then there can be stakeholder involvement because they're voting, and there's a real government then involved running it. That makes it easier for stakeholders to become involved, but there's still that challenge of the competition of just someone coming, a developer coming in,
Right.
they do this every day, and I work in that kind of field where I'm an environmental specialist, so I make sure properties, the most important thing is the community have the end use that they want. In fact, the public can overcome developers time and time again if there is a stakeholder involvement with a very through thorough end use, right? The end use is that great. It can overcome developers with inferior plans, right? That want to build on wetlands and floodplains, right? And you can point that out and it can potentially help you be competitive, right? Against those inferior plans. To have a truly inspiring plan that is effective, right? So I see all those things together. The challenge, though, is to get those initial stakeholders, to get the board of directors, get the initial stakeholders, and get some momentum, right? Where you have like the city that buys in, and there's a little political influence there that will help to get things rolling, and then more it's a snowball effect that occurs in these type of projects. And I've worked on these type of projects. They're called, the ones I work on have contamination. So what happens is nobody wants to work on the property because of the liability and the insurance problems. So that unknown cost stops the development. The challenge is, and what I do as an environmental consultant, is we get grant money from the feds and the state to go in and get enough information and sample enough that we can develop a cost estimate on what it's going to take to get it done.
And that's
right?
where I wanted to go.
Then investors come in, stakeholders come in. Once the cost is known, right, and they're really known, then investors come in because it's the unknown aspect of it, right?
And that's
And
what
same with
I
stakeholders.
forgot before,
You're
and
gonna go
now
nonprofit.
Enough was grant money, and I just heard on the news tonight that the state of Vermont is actually being granted $34.6 million in the Purdue Pharma settlement for the state of Vermont. And so that just makes me wonder, like, why wouldn't a project like this for grant money to be invested by the state?
Having the state and the feds involved and behind a project and joining with the public,
Right?
it can be a really smart first step. And then because there's a motivation for the municipalities, cities, and others to appease, those leaders
I think it was
and that type of
36.
leadership. If there's a protocol coming from feds in the state that they want to do these type of things, and you had mentioned sustainability, which I'm getting a PhD in sustainability now. Vermont has sustainability goals that it must meet on a very strict timeline. 2025, 2030, the citizens of Vermont can actually sue the state if it doesn't get done, which could motivate the state officials to become involved in a project like this, which is going to have a low carbon footprint, right? So that may be a place to really start, is to look at grants and to talk to a state official and see if you can get that kind of stakeholder involvement. That would be a great first step to get things really rolling.
Get to Lakey and Bernie and people that, can make something happen. I would imagine not playing here in Rutland with people that are just opposition essentially, from what I understand.
If there's an end use that can combine, a community working and stakeholders together that generates a flow of money, right, through these different stakeholders, and everybody gets a little tiny bit, right? Everybody gets their little tiny bit. That's all they really need to create this bioregional economy. Then you can get somebody like Bernie or somebody to come in and say, well, we've got to reach this state goal, right? And this is part of that solution. So I can get behind that now, and then he can put some pressure on local people to make stakeholders more interested. But my guess is you might need that nonprofit board of directors to handle that type of input.
Right. There's people that specialize in grant writing, and people that usually specialize in grant writing are usually pretty, although they get paid to do it to a large extent, they're also usually pretty generous with, donating time.
There are nonprofit organizations, like I've been on the board of directors for the Brownfield Coalition of the Northeast. So if this property was contaminated, that would actually fall into like this nonprofit. And then you can ask nonprofits like that, hey, can you help us with this type of project? So I'm the expert if we found contamination or if that was a threat to the development of, or the reuse of the property, then that would fall into it could become a brownfield, right? It's an underutilized property that isn't reaching its fullest potential, that would fall under, then nonprofit people could potentially do pro bono work, right, and get green credit for
Does
something
city
like that.
sewer go out there? Or are they on septic systems in a big floodplain like that?
They're on city sewer.
There's an X-ray barn, who knows what's in there?
A what?
There's an X-ray barn, who knows what's in there?
Oh, from,
Yeah.
just as
Anybody
far
Well,
as.
that's a really good point. I mean, any developer who's going to go on that site has to do what's called due diligence.
Right.
So they have to look at that, and then they will have to, if there's any type of threat of contamination, even threat of it, it'll be brought up in what's called a phase 1 report. And then they must resolve that phase 1 report by sample. And if they find, but that creates, if anything shows up on the phase 1 report, it shows an uncertainty to the amount of cost it'll take to finish the project. And whenever there's an uncertainty, it slows down the development. The amount of uncertainty is the amount of fear the developer has to face, right? So the less uncertainty, the less contamination, the less amount of uncertainty, the more developers are able to act quickly, right?
Well, Otter Creek,
Just kind of like, that's just how it works.
Otter Creek bordering that property is a big concern.
The wetlands in the floodplain is definitely going to be something they're going to have to consider. But there seems to be some type of a retention pond, and it's already college, so my guess is the engineers are going to get into that and probably say we can handle those type of things. Engineers can do a lot of things.
Right.
But you got to pay for it.
Well, we're really glad that you're in Rutland City, Jamie.
And as a musician, I love this project, and I believe that music does heal. In fact, it's a big part of my life. My whole family are musicians. So we just played at the benefit concert at Grace Church on Sunday. So the real challenge here is stakeholders. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's changing philanthropy to stakeholders. That, I think, will really help the project.
Although they could be one and the same.
If you, hey,
I mean, if someone.
I don't know any philanthropist. I don't know anybody with money, I don't know anybody with free money ready to throw at a project that they're not gonna want an investment from, right?
Right,
So
or
that's,
that they're not gonna want a part in.
they're gonna want a part of it. Bruce Springsteen is gonna buy it, he's gonna wanna play there, or he's gonna wanna be able to say everything.
Input.
Right? Well, he's gonna wanna have complete authority over the property, and he should, because it's his, he's buying it, right? He's possessing it then.
Right.
Whereas what we're talking about is a shared community, therefore you need everybody to have a little bit without possessing anything.
Well,
Right?
no.
Everybody's got a piece of the pie, they're all stakeholders, but they don't actually possess property. It's nobody actually possesses it. It'll be run by a board of directors, right? So that everybody shares it. So, but if you come in with one big donator, then they're gonna possess it, right? I don't know if ultimately if the city's gonna be happy with that, if the possessor, they can decide what they want to do, right? So,
There'd still be a board, if there was a single chunk of money that came from a if it was donated, it would need to be a nonprofit for that person to have a tax deduction of coughing up a serious chunk of change like that. If
so
Springsteen wanted
you gotta go
to,
through the board anyway.
right, and so the nonprofit would still have a board. But if there was multiple nonprofits and some type of board director. I mean, that could work too. I think there's multiple ways to go about it.
It seems like you need one board and then multiple donators,
Sub-board.
right? With committees, right? Committees. And then you need multiple donators and
Right.
multiple stakeholders. And some type of a director to make sure all those pieces are fitting together.
It's
In a
been,
very,
it's
very
been done
functional-
before.
I've seen it done.
It can be done in Rutland.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. I've seen it done. I've been part of it.
So listen, it's 7 o'clock. Does anybody else have any comment on this?
I have a closing thing. How do we as a group, let's just say if we are the group, how do we move forward or proceed? Like what are next steps?
Well,
How do we try to help that happen?
We're gonna have a festival in June that we're gonna need help with, is what it comes down to. Hopefully, that will bring more people to the table, is what it comes down to. And that's why we're doing it. We're hoping to start regular festivals. We're also talking about a festival over Labor Day weekend.
And they're in the rec center part of this property?
Right. So that's where we're going from here. So tell your friends, talk about it, and understand that this is a really good thing. This is people working together for a common cause, and I can't think of anything better than music and children. So thanks for coming. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So a few things, I like what he said about the due diligence, which is kind of like what I was maybe getting toward as far as like list the different project areas and maybe get a few more people and then figure out like sort of degree of difficulty, like what could be done easier or what costs more or less. Which facilities could you, like you said, the cafeteria and the tunnel might be ready to go. But he used the example of contamination, and hopefully there's no contamination on here. But you do have a similar type thing with the buildings that are going to need renovation, like how much renovation, what's it going to cost? So you got to get somebody like a home inspector or maybe something on a more grander scale, like somebody who's knows historical buildings and all the laws there.
But that's where the grants can come from too, is the historical preservation approach.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the other thing is, I understand you've been told by Heritage, this is the way we're gonna do it. But if you think about it, that's forcing us to think of like, who's the millionaire or billionaire out there that we can find that, you know?
And you know what, even though Heritage is a nonprofit, functioning organization, and we, the members, supposedly have some clout, if they're running a business, I mean, they want money, they want to sell it. They want it to turn over in a single sale that makes it simple for them as a business, not in the direction that you're talking.
Right, but at the same time if you're trying to create a community group at a grassroots level, look how many people are here, right? We got to grow more people, right?
Right.
$10 checks, like Bernie Sanders, $27, whatever. So the way you do it is you start small and you build up. I mean, most businesses started small, unless, somebody's dad gave them, a lot of money to start with. Most people start small. But you're being forced into a corporate model to say, you got to have this money available and we're going to plunk it down and then we start. So how do we, But I think if you do the due diligence and you show them that you've done the due diligence, then you could talk about this piece, or these are the pieces that we can start with if you would allow us to rent. And maybe if they see those more detail, more plans, like you were saying, more things laid out, then they might change their mind. But right now, it's still very pie in the sky.
They can change their mind. I've been working on this even though there was a signed contract. It was never public, so I never got to build the coalition, the community that I need to do now. I need to get the community behind this, and that's by getting the word out. And we're going to do that with a festival and any other way we can.
Why do you think they can't change their mind?
I didn't say they couldn't change their mind. I'm saying
They're
that
not willing.
we have to build community to believe that this can be done. That's where where I'm at now, that we have to convince the Rutland community that this is a good thing for Rutland. And job training is one of the top priorities of the governor. He's got lots of money to give away for job training. We have a training center site here, so we just need to get the word out to more people. I want to really wrap this up now. Does anybody else have anything to say?
I got one quick thing to say, I'm sorry. I think
No,
it would
not at
really
all,
help with
Jamie.
these two conversations. I've been studying my PhD studies in sustainability education. The difference between the bottom line and what's called the triple bottom line. All right, the triple bottom line is profit, but it's also people and place. And then the United Nations adds a fourth one, which is sustainable development. Okay? What you were mentioning before, which is excellent, which is businesses must ultimately meet a bottom line. Okay? If they're a private sector business, they must meet a bottom line. Now, this project is trying to do the triple bottom line, right? Even take that fourth one into consideration. Those things make it harder to meet the bottom line because you're sharing, all this time and effort, right? So the more the plan shows that you're trying to meet the bottom line, it'll make it more convenient for Heritage and others to get on board, right? You clearly have the other aspects, great thoughts on people and place, like you were mentioning, job training, that's people, and place. You clearly have thought about the place. So you've got the other aspects of the triple bottom line really strong. The question is the profit. Is there a way to address the profit aspect of the triple bottom line that inspires those private sector, even the public sector, the political sector, those groups, right? And so I guess I would just suggest that you may want to put more thought into, and I've heard a lot of ideas on what would generate profit. The question is how much, when, right? And have a strategy and a plan that says we can make this much money. So you're making a real strong attempt to meet the bottom line, right? And then those groups can see that and they're attracted to the project, right? Because they see you're trying to meet the bottom line. And I can see all the best way to do it is to coordinate all these different things on top of each other, right? With the director and the schedule, so that there's always money flowing, right? You're creating a flow of money. Even if you're not creating a huge profit, it's like, hey, your record's on the charts, you're going up the charts, it's still being played, there's money to be made, right? Your trajectory is positive, right? So as you meet that bottom line, as you address it, then those other aspects of the triple bottom line get pulled in with it, right? So I think that may help because again, these two conversations seem to be like recognizing that. And then you chimed in with job training in the place. So there's no question that the state officials want to bring the triple bottom line to projects throughout the state. Nobody knows how to do it yet. We just haven't figured it out. Vermont, I think, is on the forefront of it. But even Vermont, we're struggling through it. It's hard. This is hard stuff, right? This is really hard stuff, and nobody appreciates how hard it is. But Bernie and others, they know they want to see this. So if we can somehow, again, bring it to their attention, they may have some ability to help a project like this.
I know you want to close this up, but getting Bernie to get here to talk about stuff would get a lot of people here.
That would get your attention, and that would get the ball rolling.
And getting
If you don't have the
Bernie
money, then that would help to bring the attention to then start to bring in, to attract stakeholders.
And unfortunately, we're still a capitalistic society for the most part in our
So a bottom line has to be addressed in the conversation, respected.
Money talks.
It has to be respected.
I see Rutland City as a model city that can come back in the midst of climate crisis. And there's no discussion on whether this is climate crisis or what. When we are contaminating our own drinking water, it's a crisis. It's a crisis, and we have to pay attention to that.
I think we could argue, and I just put on a presentation through Stevens Institute of Technology about sustainability. This is the decade of ecological restoration through the United Nations, and it's an urgent crisis to meet the climate crisis. So I think you could argue that the sustainable development of the property goes directly toward ecological restoration.
Yeah.
And that could meet, not only an international goal, but a state goal. And you could also argue that the sustainable development of the property would help the state meet its climate goals. And if they don't, they're going to get sued by the same people who want this project, right? So that would put a little pressure on them to consider it.
Thank you all. We're gonna publish this on PEG TV so more people can see it. So I don't know if any of you've seen my program on the porch, and so this wasn't on the porch tonight, but it's an absolute discussion that we need to have in Rutland. And thank you all for coming, and thank you for your input. And we'll keep you all informed on how we proceed. Thank you so much.